one of the identifying characteristics of our human experience is that we as people are constantly trying to make sense of what it means to be who we are. Does that make sense? That we as humanity, one of the defining characteristics of our humanity, right, is this reasoning through. We're trying to make sense, process what it means for us to be who we've been created to be. Of course, we make sense of this in our families, right? What it means to be part of a particular family lineage. We process that through the lens of our national identity, what it means to be part of a country. And of course, we process that through what it means to be part of a faith community, too, that's endured for thousands of years now. All these parts of what it means to be who we are. But especially we as humanity continue to really wrestle with and try to make sense out of what it means that despite all this history behind us, despite all this identity that's been formed, we still suffer. We still experience death. We still experience loss. And thus we as humanity try to look for patterns in the midst of it. We create art to process it. And we put processes in place to help us walk through it all and make sense of it so that we can somehow be grounded when we feel like there is no ground beneath us. And one of the enduring practices, especially as people of faith, that has been constructed to help us make sense out of life and death and suffering is the way our readings in Scripture are oriented. Right? We've got this grand cycle called the lectionary, right? And it appoints a certain gospel reading every week of the year, and for other festivals that might not be on Sundays. And so we hear, right? In this part of the year, we've been walking through the life of Jesus, and what that means for us. And of course, each year of the lectionary is dedicated to particular gospels that tell the Jesus story in a particular way for us. So, when we're in the year of Mark, we hear almost always from Mark's gospel, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. And when we're in the year of Matthew, we hear Matthew's gospel almost exclusively, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. And now we're in the year of Luke, which we hear from Luke's gospel Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. But we have more than 3 gospels in our New Testament canon, don't we? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So what about John's gospel? Why don't we have a year dedicated to this particular way of telling the Jesus story? Well, John's an interesting take, for one thing. John uses different language to talk about the Jesus story. John uses a different timeline than the other 3 Gospels. And of course, John comes at things from a slightly different theological angle. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we have Gospel stories that begin with the birth of Jesus or the baptism of Jesus. But in John, it starts before all that. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so John kind of has this cosmic scope that broadens our horizons. And throughout history, then, John has been the gospel we have used to interpret the other 3. And because of this unique language and framework and theological orientation that John has, our lectionary cycle saves these readings from John's gospel for some of our most important turning points in the church year. From Christmas morning, if we were to gather, it's not our practice in this congregation, but if we were to gather Christmas morning, the gospel reading we would hear would be from John. And of course, as we come to Good Friday, when we remember the death of Christ, we hear again the Gospel of John. And many of the Easter stories celebrating resurrection, life beyond death, Christ raised, many of those are from John as well. And so as John holds these critically most important images and frameworks for our faith, we get them at these big turning points of the year that help inform what God is about, our understanding of Christ in the world, and of course our understanding of our role in it as well. And today is no exception. For this is the last kind of normal Sunday in the Lenten movement. Right? Of course, once we get to next week, it'll be Palm Sunday, which opens us to Holy Week, remembering the Last Supper on Maundy Thursday, and Christ's death on Good Friday, and of course, resurrection life persisting beyond it all on the day of resurrection on Easter Sunday. So today, this last kind of regular Sunday in the Lenten series is a turning point for us. And the person who leads us through this particular turning point is Mary, the sister of Martha, the sister of Lazarus, as told in John's Gospel. And of course, this story that we hear proclaimed today at this turning point in the church year, it comes right after Lazarus had died. And Jesus was away, and they were angry at him. They said, "Lord, if only you'd been here, our brother could have been saved. You could have saved him." In the midst of that death that Mary and Martha are experiencing, Jesus comes. And what does he do? He raises Lazarus from death, right? Lazarus, the one who's been dead 4 days, Jesus raises him, which orients the people towards this reality that God will bring persistent life beyond death, and that God will somehow make things new. And so then they gather for this meal at their home, Lazarus, Mary, Martha, these three siblings, and it's there that Mary comes to Jesus with this costly perfumed ointment and rubs it on his feet with her hair, lavishing him in love, all in preparation for Jesus' own death that is soon to come. And so Mary helps us occupy this middle space. Mary helps us understand what it means for us to stand between the realities of death as we experience it and the realities of resurrection that God is bringing. For in this in-between space, right, she is honest about death. She then cares for the body of the one who will suffer. And then she models this intimate closeness, this love, this abiding presence of togetherness when life seems most or least hopeful. And so perhaps we can learn from this movement as well. We can follow her lead. For as we look ahead to Good Friday, we must be honest about that, even though it brings discomfort. And we can recognize what that does in our bodies, and we can care for one another in the midst of that space. And we too can also embody a radical sort of togetherness that expresses deep abiding love that will carry us through the difficult days ahead. For indeed, this is exactly the sort of movement that Christ, who is himself resurrection, walks with us through. Just as God has done it before, God will do it again, and will walk with us into resurrection life beyond, where all things will be made new. And so may such newness find us and form us and deliver us into that new life in the days and weeks to come. A blessed fifth Sunday in the season of Lent to you, dear people. Much is yet to come.